posting on YouTube with my producer, Alex. Alex, what do we got today?
Newswire Monday. Hope everyone's having a great start to the day. All right, so we have today the 7 things 98% of men learn too late in life, according to psychology.
Ooh.
Yeah, interesting
Ooh.
study. It was on the Vessel digital publication. And the first thing we'll start with, which is written in this article, is the importance of emotional intelligence. You talk about a lot.
I talk about a lot, but I also brought up in one of my stories, Instagram stories, I believe I shared roughly a week ago, and got some very interesting feedback from. I think I posted a conversation I had with a podcast where we were talking about emotions. Or no, it was a roundtable call. A roundtable session that I had, and one of the roundtable members, we were talking about their work dynamic. And one of the things that I have found, and this is myself, this is others, is that we put this barrier on to protect our emotions. And because of that barrier, that armor, we almost kind of go, I don't want to say blank or vanilla, but we're almost devoid of emotion because there's certain styles of leadership. There's certain organizations, certain cultures where they're like, no, leave that stuff at home. Once you walk past the door, the threshold of the office, whatever's going on the rest of your life is meaningless. And what I think is interesting about that is we're emotional people, right? People are emotional. Humans are emotional. That is a caveat of humans. I think the only way to not have emotions is to remove that center from the brain.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that we talk about this first point, the importance of emotional intelligence. That kind of precludes that you have to understand, accept emotions, and not just totally be devoid of them or say the solution is getting rid of emotions. It's no. Understand they're there. Understand how to utilize them. Understand their place. And I believe this, that, if one of the facets of leadership, I believe it's one of the 3 main facets of being able to lead. The 3 of them are having a vision and being clear about that. 2 is connection. 3, that leads to influence. You can't have a connection without emotion.
And for those, watching this and listening and say, oh, I have, emotional intelligence down, or maybe it's not as important. This is interesting. Check this out. In a recent study of over 42,000 participants.
That's a few people.
That's a few people found that people with a higher EQ, emotional intelligence rating, is abbreviated as EQ, make on average of $29,000 more per year.
It's pretty substantial.
Continuously increases the higher emotional intelligence you have. It proves, or it is shown in the data, that you will make more money.
So here comes the real question. We'll get through all the 7 of these points, but I think spending time on this one, again, the story that I shared, it was interesting. I saw 2 main camps. I saw one group of people are like, nope, there's no place for emotion in business. Just be bam, bam, and others like, yeah, absolutely. Here's what I recognized. If I look at those 2 camps of people, and I know both camps intimately, is the one camp was made up predominantly of people that had served in military, which is very interesting. Which, a lot of the work done the last handful of years with the Air Force, Brene Brown has shared this, the empathy, and I even think, deeper conversations with these guys, individuals, we would have seen that, oh yeah, we're just on 2 different perspectives of the same thing. The other one was a group and sector that is more involved in sales, personal relationship, connection. They're like, absolutely, there's a place for emotion. So this idea of emotional intelligence, I believe what, we look at this and understanding is, part of emotional intelligence is empathy. For me, empathy, I define it as putting your arm around someone and walking with them. Right. That requires a level of vulnerability. That requires a level of connectedness. That requires you to appreciate and understand what they're going through. I can't be apathetic and completely cold in that relationship, or you're going to be like, dude, are you there or are you just along for the ride? And I think this idea, this conversation about emotions in business and having emotional intelligence is difficult because for so many years, everything was taught tactical, skills, emotions don't matter. And now we're realizing, oh, the only way to maximize someone's skills and technical ability is to understand what they're going through, what makes them tick, the soundness of their emotions, so that way they feel that, oh, okay, you do care about me, you do want my best. That's all emotional, and it isn't a derogatory. And I think that's where the confusion gets to be. Go ahead.
And to continue down the list, because we still got 6 more to go here, of the
We
7
do.
things 98% of men learn too late in life, according to psychology. Number 2 is relationships over possessions. And this is interesting. A shocking fact that this study did, that we are exposed to around 4,000 to 10,000 ads per day. And much of this advertisement is directed to young men. As a result, by watching a lot of these ads, the watches, the cars, the smartphone to be successful, this or that, that those material items become more important than relationships. But as a result, many of us sacrifice our time, our energy, and most crucially, our relationships in name of making money to buy stuff. But the truth is, happiness has a lot more to do with people than material possessions.
Man, this is an item that I think, goes right along with the emotional intelligence. Is what I probably struggled in the most early in my career. It was a lot of, how do I perceive, how do I establish my value? My value is through my success. What possessions, what vehicles do I have? What house do I own? What do I wear? Those things. And then at a certain point, you start to realize, oh, I'm all alone. People aren't with me, or, those grace that are, they have those relationships, and, really doesn't matter what they drive. People don't care. They still like them. They're funny. They're enjoyable to be around. And I think that is one of the great difficulties as this maturing, is what really matters. And, as I look forward and I look back, and, you hear many mentors of mine say, the most valuable possession you'll ever have is the relationship with people around you, with the relationships.
Yeah.
Like, would you rather have $1 billion or have really close relationships with people that believe in you, and the people that get there, that wealthy people that I've been able to spend time with and be around, they're like, oh, by far the relationships.
And
That'll lead you to much more actual physical wealth than by trying to pursue, a possession just for you to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is kind of going back to some of the conversations we've had with recent guests coming up, where, they've achieved so much in life, in wealth, and power. And then they look back and, there's, hey, where's my kids? Where's my wife? Where is everything?
Yeah.
So
they're all alone.
It's like, you were kind of a dick that whole time, and neglecting your relationships in pursuit of the power of the wealth.
It's amazing to me. You see this with both parents, but the number of times, I was just at an event this weekend, and there was a girl, and she was a senior, and it was a dance event, my daughter's dance event, and there was a girl there, and totally discounted her dad, partly because of the choices he's made. And, he made the choices that, whatever he was going after was more important than his wife and kids. And here's a senior who, is being honored and makes no mention of her father, because of that is what he has just done. He has decided that whatever his personal desire, gain, wealth, those things are more important than his own blood, his children. And it just is astounding to see. And yet it happens, and we see it. So, yeah.
All right, continue down the list. This is actually, the problem, the number one thing I struggle with, and I still struggle
Okay.
with, I have to get this down, is health is wealth. For
I can
about
help you.
5 years, I've struggled with this one.
I can help you.
Yeah.
I can help you. All you have to do is ask.
I'm asking.
Okay, let's do it. This is one thing that for me, let me just give you a little bit of history. I grew up, my dad was a college athlete. My dad was at the same point, he goes to school, he's educated as a teacher. He starts into teaching. As the story that my mom shares is that early in his mid-20s teaching, he ends up going to the doctor and he has either blood pressure or cholesterol issues, one of those two. And the doctor's like, hey, you need to change your diet. So he does. And my mom, as she shared the story, he lost weight. We got this, markers back in line. And then all of a sudden the doctor came the next checkup or whatever. It's like, hey, I have a pill now for you. This is in the early 80s, mid 80s, right? Or early, maybe late 70s. And he's like, I got a pill for you. Wow. That generation, you got a pill for it? Great. I don't need to worry about it. And my dad, who is, has been, I would say, mostly overweight, probably obese because of the markers for much of my life. One of the things that I committed to as a dad is to not let that be the case, to make sure that one of my goals, my everyday goals is, and it's getting really close, when my kids are 18, 19, and 21, which they'll be, which is only about 3-4 years away, is to be in physical health enough that if they want to go play basketball, they want to go on a hike, they want to go play pickleball, that I can do it. I can be there right there with them. And so that has been my commitment to working out. And also look, if I look back at my career as a nutritionist for dairy cows and intrigued in nutrition for humans and working out in college and just being fueled by this, it's also something that is, when I first started my career, I did two things. I went to the gym and I worked. I went to the gym and I worked. That was it. That's all I did. And I've, been a part of a health and wellness organization now for 13 years and seen lives absolutely transformed. And one thing that I've realized in it is, and I think I shared this with you maybe the other day, we were talking I have yet to hear of a situation where someone is in the middle of having a major health crisis, like a multiple, quadruple bypass surgery, something that is, somewhat genetic, but somewhat preventable. Someone who is going through complete diabetic shutdown because of their lack of attention to it, and sitting there saying, man, I am having the most impact possible. Because without your health, what are you? And, there was a time in my life where I can remember my kids were little, probably about the age of yours. And, I wasn't going to the gym as much, and I was working. I was in an office at 6:30. I was coming home 4:30, 5 o'clock. I was on call 24/7. And I remember getting home and just exhausted and sitting down on the couch. And all my kids wanted to do was play. And I realized, oh, dude, I'm not fit enough to do it. So I committed to, it's like, all right, I got to do the things that I know to do and stay committed to it. So where do you struggle?
Yeah, I'm right there. I've always been healthy and, was an athlete. And it was probably like 30, like 29, 30.
Okay.
I just got into a serious relationship with my now wife. And all of the exercise and the dieting, once we got real serious, like it was the opposite. I went the opposite way.
Okay.
Like, I finally found my life.
Yeah.
Partner. I don't need to look.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You're comfy. You're comfy.
Yeah, I'm comfy.
Yeah.
And she got comfy with me, but she's on top of me. She's like, you need to get healthier. You need to eat better. And it's diet. A lot of it's diet. I'm a snacker. I love the chips and the pretzels and the late night ice cream. So
you're a sweet or a savory guy?
Both.
Just whatever. Indulge.
The snacks. I love snacks. And then I like working out, but I've been inconsistent. And there's a gym, I got a pool, all this stuff. It's like so accessible. But I wake up and I don't go. I
Yeah.
the kids are up because I got a 9-month-old, and so
Yeah.
I'm like, I gotta watch them now. But I know I have time. There's time.
Yeah.
I have to commit to a time.
I think that's one of the biggest adjustments that I had to make in life. And I remember I was working out when my daughter was born. And at that point I was 27 and I was working out and I'd get home from work and I'd be like, I can go work out for an hour or I can spend an hour with her. It's like, I'll spend an hour with her. And that kept being my mindset, which I've been there. I mean, I think there's worse things, right? And then it got to the point where realized, all right, is it just time or is it actual quality time? And that's where I started to understand me being better, me being healthier as a way to release, as a way to just feel better about myself, to be able to be that kid to play with their kids, to be able to be that person to play with their kids. That's what I meant. Man, that's unbelievably important. But here's the thing I would say. We talked about this just the other day when we talked about some of the current people that want to perpetuate self-improvement or whatever else and going a little overboard. And one guy saying, unless you're 4% body fat, you're a waste of space. Man, no, you can overdo it too. And when it becomes, I've been there where I've meal prepped so much and I've carried the jug of water and I've like been so religious to it that it is, kind of negatively impactful in life. And I think part of it is understanding, hey, let's work at longevity as opposed to just seeing the short term. So,
and getting on a routine, I should definitely hit you up about the products because I think that there's, vitamins and nutrition that I could probably be getting, in that I'm not, and just getting on a routine. But health is a top one for me. If I can get that down, man, I'm looking pretty good on this list.
All right.
Number 4.
All right. Number 4.
The power of saying no. So this is
Ooh.
interesting. So many men spend their younger years trying to please everyone, people pleasers, often at the expense of their own well-being. Interesting.
I had somebody recently tell me this is one of the factors in hiring, job placement, is whether they had a family or not, how old they were. And one thing that which obviously that's age discrimination, but understanding that, the older you get, the more requirements have, the less time you have necessarily for work. And people enjoy that, hey, being in your early 20s and not any other options. And they're like, well, they're married to the job. And having been there a little bit, I mean, I look on the other side, man, I'm way better at what I do now because having some of these things that I've gone through in life, but also I do have those demands of my kids. And like just the other day, I was reading some things like, are you willing to not do that sales presentation? Are you willing to not do that thing knowing that it's going to cost your family? Are you willing to tell your kid, hey, I didn't do what I needed to do. And so now we can't go on vacation. We can't do the things. Now I've put our family in risk of not being able to, pay our bills. So part of the power of saying no is understanding what you can say yes to. And I think that's one of the great lessons. I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day. The lesson of learning is when you have a rubric. All right, let me share one. All right, this is a new rubric a buddy of mine shared. It's a great story. All right, the tipping phenomenon. We're talking about you go to a coffee shop, you buy a $3 cup of coffee because that's what it is, and you go to pay in the payment processing and it asks for a tip. And he sent me a meme and it was great because it's been so framed. This is what the meme says. If I'm standing, you're standing, no tip. I kind of like it. It makes it easier. You don't feel bad. You stand, I stand, no tip. And so part of that is the same as this, the power of saying no. I've already decided before I ever got there. It's not an offense. If I feel like you did a phenomenal job serving me, I'm going to tip you. But I don't feel like I have to. And I think this also comes into life and business of understanding the boundaries. Roundtable just the other day, one of the members, she shared how her boss is working on this project and needs her help. And she asked like, hey, would you be available in, kind of later in the day hours? Typically she starts at 6 in the morning. She goes to like 4 in the afternoon. That's her schedule. That's what works for her. And she's like, after 4, no, I got 2 kids, husband. Sorry, I'll do it earlier, but I'm not going to do it later. And part of the value is making that decision to say, no, I need to look out for me, because very often other people aren't. And if you're constantly saying yes to things, you're going to miss out on an opportunity that is probably more impactful or better for you. So 2 stories about the power of no.
And another no that I think about too is, as I got older and more serious about being a business owner, an entrepreneur, or my career, saying no to friends potentially. Like, hey, let's go here. Hey, let's do this. And yeah, sure, let's go. Yeah, sure, let's go. And by going out or doing a certain thing, you're tired the next day. You're like, oh, why did I? And learning to say no sometimes. Be like, hey, listen, sounds like a lot of fun, but I'm out. Not for me this time. I can't.
Yeah. I mean, one of the tools that I've utilized, talk about health, is you see it right here, the Whoop band. You can see it, the Whoop band.
Those are popular. I've seen them.
Yeah. I've had mine 7 years, maybe going on 8, 7 years. And one of the great things that it's done is not only help me quantify my sleep and value my sleep, which I've kind of valued, but is making some of those decisions to say, hey, I'm not going to have that drink. I'm not going to have that piece of cake, because I know what it's going to make me feel like tomorrow. And it's not worth it, because I know that I have to get up. I have to perform. I have to be ready, understanding the health portion of it, but it's also the power of no. And when you start to put these tools together, it makes the decision tree a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
100% agree. All right. Moving down the list. Number 5, the importance of financial literacy, which is massively important in life. And understanding how to manage money, invest wisely, plan for retirement is essential. And taking action as early as possible can make a huge difference.
Let me ask you, Alex.
Go ahead.
What was the financial situation in your family growing up?
Oh, it was so growing up, my parents, so all my grandparents are immigrants from Ukraine from World War II. So dirt poor. They came to this country with nothing. Parents grew up poor, living in Brooklyn and Manhattan back in the 60s and 70s. And then they built up their wealth. My mom has had a great career. My dad's done well. And we grew up in like a lower middle class area and until about 7th grade. And then we moved to a nicer neighborhood. So it got better with time. But not, it wasn't like super, like I didn't grow up like super rich, or I'm not a super rich kid, but they did really well for themselves as their careers went on.
So do you think it was the drive for, and I've experienced this. I've worked with, first generation, second generation immigrants to the United States, and just the desire, one, the opportunity the U.S. brings, but also the desire for, there is no turning back. I am going to make this work. So was it that, or do you think that, man, they were just very financially sound? They had great financial principles.
My mom definitely does, or did.
Okay.
Does. My dad is more of a risk taker.
Okay.
My dad, I get
it's a good thing.
Mix of both of them.
Okay.
But grandparents, I was both my grandfathers died before I was even born. I was way too little. But it is that I'm only second generation. Like my parents are first generation Americans. I'm second. And it is that grind, like watching my mom grind and my dad grind and work really hard, and knowing, and seeing where my mom grew up and knowing my grandma's pretty well till probably senior year of high school, and seeing that, observing that this is all they had. They had to work for everything that they obtained in life was important to kind of how I work in business and sports and everything that I've been a part of.
Yeah. There's 2 things that I've learned. My wife and I, when we were first married, went through, and I recommend everyone watching to do this in a relationship, is we went through a financial study together. It wasn't the popular Dave Ramsey. Dave is like, okay, he has got great points. That's another discussion. It was a different one. And for us, it was so great because it allowed us to, as a family, start to build a financial mindset together, because each one of us came from a different financial background. Her, my wife's family, my family, just as we talked about, that is your financial background. When you get into relationships, then you start to, mash that. One of the interesting perspectives here that you share, and I saw this in business working in California with a lot of, first, second, third, not quite the fourth generation of immigrants into the US, but the first generation, so hardworking. They just went above and beyond, pinched every penny. It was partly the age, the baby boomer, that age period too. Second generation, depending on how diligent that family was, some of the principles, maybe their previous wealth status, they revered it. But some of them started to be like, oh, we got it good. I mean, the parents were like, I work so hard so you don't have to. And then, it just kind of, you saw some good and bad. And then the third generation was the teller. Fine, if they were financial literate, man, the third generation really excelled and continued to grow. Or if they kind of like, I worked so hard so you didn't have to. And the second generation was like, well, this was fun. I got to surf, California, do all the things. Third generation was often, so many of them that ended up in drugs, alcohol, just complete train wrecks because of not having that financial literacy. It's not absolute, but saw that happening, and it was sad. And so then I go back to my experience. My parents were both first generation business starters on their own. They both grew up in, backgrounds of entrepreneurial families, but started their own business. And so there was some struggle there. My parents in the early 80s and a lot of agriculture, they went through some major financial distress. And I don't think they maybe fully comprehended what they were getting into, maybe didn't have the best advice financially, and struggled. And so much of my childhood and agriculture in the 80s, it was, if you were second generation on a farm, you're doing pretty good. If you were first, man, high interest rates, like double the interest rates we have now. I mean, just difficult. We talked the other day with Ron Carson, who, shared in, his family going through that trial in the early 80s. My background, my family, we went through that. And so there was always the we're broke. And that started to put a financial blueprint on me that I hated, I loathed, and started financially to try to be more aware early. And so it's driven me to, do I feel like I'm extremely financial literate? No, because I think there's if I spent the time, I could even get deeper into it. But it's to the point I understand enough to where I have advisors, because I don't want to spend all day long doing it. And I've built it over time. But understanding the impact of finances, and I would say the biggest piece there is not necessarily of interest, is not necessarily some of the X's and O's, but the mindset. Well, why do you have the view about money that you do? Do you have this mindset that I've never had it, so I'm just going to go blow it? Do you have this mindset of being, there's I'll never have money? Because wherever that blueprint came from, and I think I've talked to you about a book that really helped me, changed my life, was The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. Yeah. And it really does a great job of questioning and helping you create a new money blueprint.
What was that book again, one more time?
Yeah, The Secrets of a Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker.
Writing that one down.
Phenomenal book.
This kind of goes right into segues into number 6, which is the value of continuous learning.
Yeah.
I've kind of similar to you, my wife and I, we got wealth advisors, surrounded people with us that really knew the markets and how where to invest and put things. But like, it's this continuous learning cycle of what to do with wealth and how to save it for the future, and different things you can do and move things around. And it's just reading of the books and everything. Like, there is this continuous process of learning about those things, learning about yourself, learning about health, learning about the world, and all. There's just so much that it is good to continuously educate yourself and gain knowledge on all the things that, fascinate you. I think that's massively important and should never, ever stop.
I think that is if we look at the six that we've gone through so far: emotional intelligence, relationship over possessions, health is wealth, the power of saying no, the importance of financial literacy. I think this number 6 is one of the probably the first on the list of a differentiator. Is the people that are willing to learn do the other 5 well, because they establish that, understand that over time. But if you don't focus on that continual learning, if you're just kind of like, well, I just keep going, I just go through the hamster wheel, the rat race of life, and this is what it is, man, I can't help but attribute that to a static lifestyle of just saying, life happens to me, instead of people that have the ability to have a growth mindset where they look at whatever situation they're involved in. Whatever happens to you today is an opportunity, good, bad, indifferent. One of our business partners, close friends, a mom who's young, 2 kids. I think she's just had a birthday and was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma last week. And one of the things that she shared is just hey, I'm going to go through this. There's no other way. And it reminds me that if we can either say those things happen to us in life, or we can say, no, I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to, make the most of what happens in this life, because that's what life is about, and not hide, not go, find life in a corner, which you can do when something like that dire hits you. But it's also, to me, it again reminds me of the value of continuous learning, because I know what she's committed to in the last 6 months, year, to be healthier, to be a better mom, to make more for her family, and know that experience the last few months is only benefiting her with this new challenge.
Absolutely. This is actually the one that I admire most about you.
Okay.
You're always reading, looking, searching, trying to, gain all this knowledge. So I always admired that about you, because when we first met, you were telling me about all these books that you had read, and you have a lot of curiosity, which I think is a superpower of yours, that you're curious and learning and educating yourself, which is something I truly admire about you. So I just want to say that.
I appreciate that. Thanks, man. Thanks.
The last on the list, 7, the value of time. This is perhaps the most important point of all. Time is the most precious resource, yet it's often wasted on unimportant tasks, procrastination, or indecision. You are not going to live forever. Now is all any of us really have. Make the most of it. Learning to prioritize, manage time effectively, and focus on what truly matters can transform your life. Time. Reminds me of that Hootie and the Blowfish song.
Hootie and the Blowfish, man, that's going back.
Time.
I think when you share that, I mean, I think of Pink Floyd. Clock ticking. Yeah. Anyways, as you read that, I thought of two of the barriers that I have identified in leadership. One of them is inactivity, and one of them is intensity. And I think, ironically, because I didn't think about it until you just shared how those sit on both sides of this time equation. When we're so intense, we're like, man, I got to make the most of time. Having kids that are in high school and looking around, and, you can fall into this trap of hurry up. The kids that graduate high school early to go to college, that pursuit of, graduated college early. What for? I think of, I'm going to say our friend. Hopefully next time you talk to him, if you could appropriately say, hey, our friend, Gary V. And that's one thing that I admire about him, is he really don't be in a hurry to grow up. Don't be in a hurry to be somewhere different. Value the time where you're at right now, because you're learning something valuable. Make the most of the time you're in right now. Be aware of the time, not so intense that I have to hurry up and rush through it, because there was a part of my life where I just, like the Adam Sandler movie, I think it's Click, right? Where he just hits the fast forward button. I want to fast forward till that next, but I remember parts of my life when I was single, when I was working out and I was working, I was just like, I want something better in life. And just give me the fast forward button. Give me the fast forward button. And then there's other people that are at the stage of life that I'm at. It's like, oh, let me hit the rewind button. Let me hit the rewind button. It's going too fast.
Right.
And I'll share a valuable tool for that. I'm writing it down so I don't forget, but I want to go back to and focus on the other barrier, the inactivity. Is too often we don't value the time that we have right now. And we're like, well, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. Well, you don't know what's going to happen in your life. And, you can say, well, I'll get to it. And that inactivity is like, I just don't want to do it. Yeah. I think the greatest driver for confidence is action. And even when it's something we don't want to do, it's the hard, difficult conversation. It is am I going to make the cold sales call and have the guy reject me? Or, for me, reaching out and inviting people to the Impact Summit, July 29th and 30th, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, is saying that they may say, oh, not now. It's like, well, I don't know if I don't ask an invite. Hey, I had someone, I've gotten 2 invitations last day to events in a book. And it was like, man, it makes me feel good that they thought of me. And so I got to remember that, the feeling of them being thought of over, oh, they're going to say no. And so it's kind of, again, that value of time and understanding you can only do it now. You can't do it later. Don't fall into the trap of, oh, I meant to reach out and send them an encouraging message, and knowing that you could have changed their life had you just done that. All right.
Yeah, no, and I was just going to add to that, Tyler, kind of in where I'm at now with the kids and my parents getting older and, my mother-in-law getting older, is just the time I'm spending with them, as they are, going into retirement and getting older, and I see that and I notice it. I've really become a hyper aware of their age.
Yeah.
And just wanting to spend more and more time with them, being close to them. Like that's been something, I would say that I was not cognizant of, before, but now I'm with kids and all that. I'm like, I need to spend more time with them. This life is going by way too fast.
I think there's a book that I read, go figure. It's called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. And I read this pre-COVID, actually. So pre-2020. And in the book, they really extol the value of moments to slow down time. See, what they documented is when we have memories, we have moments that stand out. It makes time slow down. It's when we fall into the monotony of every day being the same that all of a sudden we look back and months have just blown by, where we don't have that moment. Oh, remember when we did this, or remember when we did that. Those moments slow down life. And so one of the things that, since I've read that book, it's made me cognizant of remembering moments with my kids, remembering moments in my life. And honestly, that's what made that period, I would say 2020, 2021, even 22 so hard, because we didn't have the normal occasion of events. It was disrupted. And so it's kind of like, it was fuzzy. It's confusing. And I think a lot of people have that same effect where we didn't have some of those moments because it was, maybe if we did with an attention, we had some great moments as a family, but even looking back, there wasn't this great differentiator. And it's that great differentiator that helps establish time in the power of moments and experiences. And, so as I look back and I think of some of the great things we've done as a family, and I'm excited about that, but I also am excited about the next steps of doing college visits with my kids, of them, what that next opportunity is, where I'm not like, oh, slow down, be a 6-year-old again. I look back at some of those pictures like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. But yet, man, I'm excited about the next in the current moments.
That what you just said just reminded me of during COVID. I would say within that first 5-6 months, I can't remember, but it was that staying in the house and monotonous. And I was like, my wife, her mom, her brother and sister, they all live close to us. So I was like, we all need to get out of this rut, this routine, because everyone's mental state was out of balance. Like, we're going to go up to Sequoia National Park. We're going to rent a little Airbnb. And till this day, we still talk about that moment, that time we had together.
Yeah.
We're singing
Yeah.
songs or by the
Yeah.
river. It's such a magic, and that's
Yeah.
spot on. It was so
Yeah.
true. We needed that time to do something like that together.
So let's review emotional intelligence, relationships over possessions, health is wealth, the power of saying no, the importance of financial literacy, the value of continuous learning, and the value of time. The 7, as it was identified in this article, the 7 things that you don't learn early enough, or what's the exact title?
7 things 98%
that you
of
learn
men learn too late
in life. One of if I had to say all of this can be, I guess, avoided learning too late with mentorship. Yeah. It's being around those individuals that value those things. And I had somebody share the other day is have friends in decades. If you're in your 30s, have friends that are in their 20s, have friends that are in their 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s, because that's where you're going to learn the value of this stuff. And I think the great opportunity moving forward and the encouragement is much of our audience is in this age group, right? And much of the audience that tunes in to watch a lot of the content that we collectively put together is 25 to 35. And having gone through that period ourselves just recently, you more recently than me, but looking back and say, yeah, these were some of the mistakes that I made. And a few of them I learned too late, where, man, it's figuring it out because it was costly.
Hey, Tyler, where can people listen to this, come check you out, to join the community, to dive in? I'd love to get them into the community where they can learn all these things.
Yeah, so go to YouTube. You can watch all of the content there, or go to tylerdickerhoof.com, my website. You're going to be able to scroll through, find out the different products that we have available, the Impact Summit, which I've referenced earlier, the Barriers of Leadership. I talked about 2 of the 4. Also have a course called Awaken the Leader Within. So you can learn more about the content there, learn more about being part of the Impact-Driven Leader community, a roundtable that I host. That is a cohort that we meet weekly throughout the year. So, that's where.
Awesome. Well, great episode,
all right,
Tyler. Always great.
Thanks.
Jam with you on Mondays.
Thanks for bringing it. Thanks for the audience for being here. Remember, subscribe to YouTube. We also release podcasts every Wednesday with guests. You can watch that on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, thanks for being here. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.